When Mexico City sinks, how fast can 10 million people reach the US border? This isn't a hypothetical question. It's a question of timing. Mexico City isn't just preparing for collapse, it's already collapsing. Right now, parts of the city are sinking at an astonishing rate of up to 50 centimeters per year. Its underground aquifers, the source of most of its water, are draining far faster than rain can ever refill them. A staggering 40% of all treated water is lost to leaks in its aging pipes. The city's main reservoirs are at historic dangerous lows. Why is this happening? Mexico City was built on an ancient lake bed. As the water underneath is pumped out, the ground is literally drying, cracking, and falling inward. But the real problem isn't the city's slow-motion collapse. It's what happens next. When the water finally runs out and the system fails, millions of people won't just scatter across Mexico. They'll move north, toward the highways, the deserts, and the trains. They'll move toward the US border. The question isn't asterisk if asterisk they'll move. The question is how fast they'll arrive, and which American states will buckle under the pressure first. Let's map out this unprecedented scenario. First, you have to understand why Mexico City is a ticking time bomb. The subsidence, the sinking of the ground, is violent. In the last 70 years, some neighborhoods have dropped over 30 feet. This isn't a gentle settling. It's a force that cracks building foundations, breaks water mains, warps streets, and even bends the city's metro tunnels. Then there's the aquifer depletion. Over 70% of the city's water is pulled from these underground sources, but extraction has long outpaced recharge. Combine this with historic droughts, extreme heat waves, and cycles of near-zero rainfall, and you have a recipe for disaster. On top of that, the Cutzamala reservoir system, a critical backup, is dangerously low. Even the water that makes it into the system is squandered, with 4 out of every 10 gallons lost to leaks before it ever reaches a tap. All of this is happening in a metropolitan area of 22 million people, all depending on a water system designed for less than half that population. The city is mathematically unsustainable. Failure is inevitable. So what does the countdown to collapse look like? Experts predict it will happen in phases, and it will be fast. Phase 1 is water panic. This takes place over 0 to 3 days. The taps run dry. People realize this isn't a temporary shortage. Violent queues form at water trucks. Grocery stores are stormed for bottled water. The public transport system is overwhelmed as chaos and mass confusion set in. Phase 2 is the flee or die stage, from day 3 to day 10. The population begins a mass evacuation. They'll take highways, trains, buses, cargo trucks, and many will simply start walking. Millions will be on the move, desperate to escape. This triggers Phase 3, national breakdown. Within 10 to 30 days, Mexico's internal infrastructure and government capacity will collapse under the strain of its own refugee crisis. At this point, the mass movement toward the United States becomes the only logical option for survival. Geography dictates that this migration will flow along 4 main corridors. Think of them as arteries leading north. The first is the Western Axis, or the Baja route. This is the fastest path to the US, running from Mexico City through Guadalajara and Sonora, right into Arizona and California. The pressure points will be cities like Nogales, Tucson, San Diego, and El Centro. California and Arizona will be the first states to feel this surge. Next and most critical is the Central Axis. This is the spine, the main artery. It runs from Mexico City up through San Luis Potosi to Monterrey and directly into Texas at Laredo. If Mexico City collapses, this route becomes a human tsunami. The pressure on Laredo, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, and cities deeper inland like San Antonio and Houston would be immense. The third route is the Eastern Axis. Following the Gulf, migrants would move through Veracruz and Tamaulipas, aiming for the Brownsville and McAllen sector of South Texas. This would immediately destabilize the entire Rio Grande Valley. Finally, there's the Desert Axis. A smaller, but more volatile flow of people would take the hard path through Chihuahua and into New Mexico. Now, let's talk numbers. If just 10% of Mexico City's population evacuates north, that's 2.2 million people. If a terminal collapse forces 50% to flee, that's 11 million people. And they won't be arriving over years. They will arrive in weeks. The US border is not designed for this. Not legally, not logistically, and not militarily. Under this kind of pressure, border towns would buckle almost immediately. State National Guards would be overwhelmed. Federal resources would be stretched to the breaking point. Major highways would shut down, hospitals would overflow, and official ports of entry would fail. This isn't about politics. It's about physics. Extreme population pressure breaks systems. The collapse of Mexico City isn't just a Mexican problem, it's a crisis that will reshape the entire continent. Mexico City, one of the world's largest metropolises, faces a terminal crisis. What happens next? Even if just 10% of its population decides to move north, that's 2.2 million people. If a full-scale collapse forces 50% to flee, we're talking about 11 million people heading for the US border. Not over years, but in a matter of weeks. Our border simply isn't designed for this. It's not a question of legal frameworks, logistics, or even military presence. A human wave of this magnitude exerts a physical pressure that systems can't withstand. Border towns would buckle instantly. State guards would be overwhelmed, federal resources stretched to their breaking point. Highways would shut down, hospitals would collapse, and major ports of entry would fail. This isn't a political argument. It's a structural one. Population pressure breaks structures. Which US states would feel this first? Texas is ground zero, absorbing nearly 70% of the initial migration pressure. Cities like Laredo, Del Rio, and Eagle Pass would be the first to fall. In Arizona, the Nogales to Tucson corridor would be completely overwhelmed. California would see the San Diego and Imperial Valley regions destabilize. Even New Mexico, with its smaller border, would crack under such a sudden immense load. And this shockwave isn't just a one-way street. The collapse of Mexico City creates a domino effect within Mexico itself. Cities like Querétaro, San Luis Potosí, and Monterrey would collapse under the weight of internal migration. Guadalajara would face a catastrophic water crisis. The cities surrounding the capital don't escape, they fall with it. So why doesn't the US border hold? It's not about weakness, it's about design. It's not built for millions arriving at once. Think of the choke points, the I-35 corridor at Laredo, the river crossings at Eagle Pass, the massive Tijuana-San Diego mega corridor, the Nogales Canyon system, and the rail and road triangle at El Paso. Once one of these critical sectors breaks, the pressure shifts, and they all begin to fail in a cascade. The shockwave from a Mexico City collapse wouldn't just stop at the border. It would ripple deep into the United States, hitting states already weakened by their own internal vulnerabilities. We're talking about critical infrastructure nodes, from the power grid and heat corridors to nuclear plants and even prisons. If you want to understand how these systems connect and where the real-world breaking points are, without fear-mongering, just using geography, data, and hard facts, then you need to see our next video. We're re-releasing America's deadliest prisons, the facilities that unleash chaos in a blackout. Here at 0 Hour Atlas, we don't predict doom. We map what survives. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.